This one. So most of you probably know Sophia already. Her background's as a model, so she'll mostly be covering sort of posing and expression type stuff. She's modelled all around the world, like Tokyo, New York, LA, Sydney, Palmerston North, all the main fashion centres.
Actually, it's called North Palms.
Oh, sorry. But she's been cosplaying for the last few years and getting quite into it, I think, doing her own builds and so on. Whereas I'm a photographer, obviously, mostly do commercial and portrait stuff, so ads and buses and billboards and that kind of thing, and sort of 50-odd magazines worldwide the last couple of years. And in the portrait stuff, I occasionally get to do cosplay, which is cool. So what we'll start off with just covering a whole bunch of stuff as fast as we can. I think one of the mistakes people make with photography is worrying about the actual shoot, when making a good photo is a lot longer than that. Like it's actually pushing the shutters, just that anyone can do that, that's no skill. It's what you set up in front of it. So we're going to cover a bit beforehand that might seem obvious, but it's actually really fundamental and important. So the first thing you'll cover is what you're going to shoot. So first thing is what costume you want to do. That seems obvious, but again, you're going to make sure it's photo ready. You don't want things unfinished. You don't want to be like, oh, we can't do any shots from the back because it's all taped up. You know, make sure you know exactly what you want to shoot. Then if you're going to do like, is it yourself, is it a group? What do you want to do in that regard? And then most critically I find is that you've got to think of what I call the vibe of the images. Again, it sounds simple, but say you're doing Batman, it'll be easy to say, oh, I'll just get some shots, but there's a big difference between, do you want him moody in an alleyway looking all staunch and protecting Gotham? Do you want action shots, like throwing batarangs around and stuff? Or do you want a clean studio thing, showing off all the work you've done in your costume? Or is it something totally against type, like a comedy thing? Maybe he's looking at Robin's report card or something. Or maybe you want all of those. There's a big difference between what those are. And if you just go in with no real concept, you're just hoping something happens on the day, that can happen. I mean, it does. Sometimes when you see it all set up, you get inspired. But to rely on that is really, really foolish. It's much better to plan stuff and then leave room for inspiration. Don't just go, oh, we'll find something, it'll be great, we'll just make it up. You've got to have the stronger your feel is of what that vibe of the image is going to be, that influences pose, expression, background, lighting, everything comes down to that. So the clearer an idea what you want you can get at the start, the better the photo's going to be. It's as simple as that. So I'll let Sophia talk about what you actually do on the day in terms of beforehand, in terms of actually setting something up.
Well, first of all, I think finding a photographer is pretty important. I'm quite spoiled in that regard, considering that I've got Matt, and me and Matt tend to work together quite a lot. I would base that around what your costume's going to be. I think if you're going to be doing something that's soft and pretty, I'd go for somebody that's really good with kind of natural light sort of stuff. That way you're going to get the sort of vibe in the photo that you want. The next thing you've got to work out is your budget. So with paid shoots, they kind of vary in price depending on the skill and experience of the photographer. I think that's something you don't really want to skimp on. If you're going to pay for it, you might as well find the person that you think is going to be best for the job. That also comes down to what you want to shot, like what Matt was talking about before, with whether or not you want like a clean studio kind of thing, or you want something that's like a little bit more actiony. You've got to find somebody that's going to be good at doing that. If your idea, for example, is something that involves a lot of Photoshop, you're not going to want to work with a natural light photographer because they're not going to be that experienced at that. Then I'd go for setting dates. With setting dates, allow a lot of time to prepare for it, so at least a couple of months, and that way you're not rushed with what you're doing, and you've got a little bit of time to think about things, and then that way if anything goes wrong with what you're trying to, sorry, I'm really nervous. That way if anything goes wrong, you've got a little bit of time to sort it out.
Okay, so when you actually come to then figure out the actual shoot, I can't say this, how important the location is. It is absolutely critical. Like the difference between, as me as a photographer, it's really frustrating when you see people with amazing costumes. They get them out for Armageddon, they get like a picture in front of a bunch of people here or in front of a wall, or just like in a hall somewhere, and they pack it away. And you go, that costume was amazing, what a waste. You know, like you've done all this work to create this character, complete the world, you know? You've got to think about everything in the image is part of the image. Don't just skip, you've done all this effort on this, don't just skip on that stuff. But it's easy again to think, you can't get a location. You're a sci-fi character, you're a fantasy character, you don't have a castle. Well, you don't need a castle, you just need a bit of wall that looks like it might be from a castle. You just need like, or something if it's natural, then that's obviously timeless. If you're doing an industrial type character, you just need to find bits of metal in the background that might look like it. You don't necessarily need the whole location. I think it's something that's a bit of a skill to it, but at the same time, there's much more around than you think. When you do find a spot that you think this might suit, hey, I'll take it to the ground. When you do find something, you have a look around it, have a look at things like, you know, often I've had people suggest locations that are great, but it's like half an hour hike to get to it, and they can't do it in costume, you can't carry gear there, or there's no parking, so no one can actually get close enough. Then there's also things like, is it open? If it's an indoor place, can you actually get to it on the hours you want to get to it? Are there people around, people walking dogs through the middle of it? Are they all going to stand and stare? Which might be fine, or it might really upset you. Like if you get your confidence rattled, you're screwed. So always try and find quiet spots if you can, unless you're naturally super gregarious and it doesn't bother you, then fine. But people will stop and stare, it just happens. So it's best to find somewhere where you think you'll be comfortable shooting. And a lot of people look for like abandoned areas, which is cool, but again, people own them. So get permission every time. You might think, oh, just jump the fence, nobody cares. It's so easy to get permission, like especially abandoned places, because people who own them don't give a shit. They just go like, yeah, go nuts. I mean, we did a shoot once, we did a zombie thing in a condemned building. And I remember at the end ringing the guy up and saying, oh look, we're all done, it's getting dark, we have to go, but I'll have to come back tomorrow and get the keys off you again because I've got to clean up all the blood. And he was like, don't worry about it. And I was like, no, there's a lot of blood, mate. Like, seriously. He goes, no, don't worry about it. And I go, no, there's like a lake, someone's written help me in it, you know. And he goes, look, the next kids who break in are going to get the fright of their lives. So it's all good. But because we have permission, we can set up lights, we can spend all day, and you don't care about it, you're not hiding from security guards. So just always get permission, it's so easy. And then, I mean, you're taking photos, you're literally taking evidence you were there. It's silly to be doing stupid stuff. Like, I've never had anyone say no to an abandoned place. They're really easy to get. The hard thing is finding out who to ask, really. Now, into the more critical sort of stuff is, when you're looking at a location, you don't necessarily need 360 degrees of perfection. As I say, you don't need the castle, you just need the bit that looks like a bit of a castle. And I remember an interview with the Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, and he was asked how his compositions are so beautiful, and they said, how do you do this in these period samurai films like Seven Samurai and Ran and stuff? And he says, oh, it's pretty straightforward. If the camera pans left, there's a catering truck. If it pans right, there's a telegraph pole, so that's my shot. He was taking the piss, but at the same time, there's a lot to take in. That's actually really critical in that it doesn't matter what's left or right or up or down. It only matters what's in your shot. If you get the bit in the shot that people expand to the world, you don't need a forest, you need a few trees and maybe someone holding a branch near the camera you can shoot past, and it looks like a forest. You don't need a forest. I remember one shot I did with someone in this room who I won't name, hi Sylvie, where we were doing like a fantasy character, and so we found there was a couple of big rocks near my house, and she stood up on those, and I got down low and shot up, and all of the background was just sky and trees. So it looks like she's on the end of this cliff looking heroic, and no one knows there's a dog walking track right there, and there's a trucking yard right there. Nobody can see it, so it doesn't exist. So you've got to train yourself to look for these sort of things. But it's a double-edged sword, because the flip side is everything in the image does count. The one I get a lot of is people go like, I found this great field. It's all flowers, perfect to shoot in. It's like, it is great if you're lying in the flowers, but I'm not going to shoot you like this, I'm going to shoot you like that. And that's a bunch of houses, that's a bunch of houses, that's a kiddie's playground or something, and there's don't know what that is. And that's all going to be in shot. So what I find is good is, it's hard to train yourself to look that way, because as humans, we filter things. If we're talking to someone, we filter out the noise of the traffic, we just listen to them. And we do it visually as well. We take away things that aren't important to us. No camera can do that. Camera's just that little blurry car in the distance that you don't really care about. In your shot is a big red blob next to someone's head, you know? So you've got to get in there, and you've got to try and see the world that way. The easiest way is to take a camera along when you're looking at the location and just take shots. I did a shoot with Sophia, which is Lara Croft up at Percy's Reserve in Lower Hutt. I have actually shot that set twice. The first time was with my long-suffering girlfriend, and so instead of Lara Croft standing there with guns, it's my girlfriend on her phone or looking bored. But all the shots are the same, because I got to look at it, it was like, I can figure out my lighting, I can see what works, what doesn't, what elements are distracting. And sometimes it's not what you think. When you look at it actually lined up, where there's a person there, you go, oh, actually that branch is really distracting, and that's awful, I really don't want that in shot. And that's a difficult thing to get your head around, and it takes a bit of time. But reference photos can save your life because it helps you figure out so much. So I don't want to hit it too much on lighting, because that's like a huge thing. It's like 6 workshops by itself. But it's too important to ignore. So I'll just talk about in terms of natural light for the moment. There's one thing people always think sunny day is great, everything's beautiful, take a great shot. Hard sunlight is great, but it's also really tough to work with. And if you're not experienced, it can be brutal. Like if you ever see shots taken in like fashion magazines, since the light's always above, it creates big pits of shadow in your eyes. So you get people doing this all the time, and then you're looking at the sun. So you get people doing this, so you get this sort of orgasmic kind of thing that they do in fashion photos, which I've done lots of times. But it's an awkward thing to do. It's difficult to get around, and you can work with bright sunlight, but it's tough. It's much easier if you do have a bright sunny day, late in the day or early in the day, because the sun's lower, it tends to be more flattering, you get better shadows. There's a reason everyone wanks on about golden hour, it's because it looks better. So, I mean, it's a challenge, but that is, if you can work with that, shadows are your biggest friend. Like, everyone talks about photography being painting with light, it's not, it's painting with shadow. Like, if you ever draw a circle, if you make that a sphere, you shade on one side, right? That's what you do with light. You're just trying to make dimension, make shape, make drama, make mystery. That's what you do with shadows. And when I talk about that, I mean there's all sorts of different shadows. And when you see people with different lights, all they care about is shadows. Main thing is hard and soft, the two aspects. When people say hard light, they actually mean hard shadows. Like if you go out in the bright sun and you look down at your shadow, the edge of your shadow is super defined, it's really hard, it's a real clean edge. So it's dramatic, it's bold, it's bright, but yeah, it can be really crazy and flattering. Whereas you go out and you look at my shadow now, I can barely see it because the light from behind me is so diffused. That's soft light. The shadows are soft, it's not harsh. That gives a different vibe in itself. And then you've got to figure out, do you want the shadows to go black? Do you want them to go just a little darker? All these things depend on things around you, and if it's tough to control, and if you're not used to it, that can be difficult. So the easiest way is just to take light out of the equation and get an overcast day, just because then the sky, instead of the sun being a hard light source, is a small one, and that's relative to you. So the sun is huge, but it's so far away there's just a dot in the sky. So it's a very hard light source. Whereas an overcast day, all the clouds light up like the world's biggest softbox. It's super soft. Like you can have no shadow on an overcast day. So that's the easiest way. Your pictures are guaranteed to look good. They might not be great, but they will not be bad. And I know photographers who that's the only way they work. They don't have lights, they just shoot overcast days. And it's a really good way that you take light out of the equation and you're just worried about everything else, which can simplify life. I don't necessarily ascribe that, like I love lighting, so, but it's a safe thing to do. If you are stuck with a bright day, the other thing is just step into the shade. The same thing happens. One thing you've got to be careful of those that I've noted there is that sometimes you can stand in the shade, the background's still really bright, so you're quite even and smooth, but everything's massively bright. That can look weird. So generally make sure that the background's in shade as well. The other thing you get in trouble with standing in shade is open shade's best, so there's something just overhead rather than enclosed. But if light's hitting the ground, it bounces back, and lighting from below is super unflattering. Like remember as a kid, you got a torch and put it under your chin? Yeah, it's that, man, just don't do it, eh? Unless you're doing specifically a horror thing, it's super unflattering, and it's avoided at all costs. So if you've got a reflector, you see people holding reflectors underneath like this. That's only if it's already light above, so you're filling it. If you're in a shade, you're doing this, it's going to look awful. Put the reflector up here, and get the light coming down. We're used to light from above, you know. We're used to, as a species, the sun's above us. That's why we put lights in the ceiling, not on the floors. It's the way we're used to seeing things. Like, we're used to shadows under noses, not above them. So it's one of those things that, if you're unsure about lighting, just take it out of the equation, just make it as even and flat as possible, and then you can worry about everything else. So now that's sort of basically set up what you do beforehand in terms of planning a shoot overall. You've got your location sussed, you've got your costume sussed, you know who you're doing with, all that sort of stuff. So the next thing is really what you do actually right before, the night before or something.
So the night before your shoot, get your costume all ready, make sure everything's sorted out. I definitely recommend doing a test that night just to make sure things aren't going to fall apart, because that's something you don't want to find out about on the day. You don't want to show up to your shoot and your stuff's all falling off, because Photoshop can only do so much. Get plenty of sleep no matter how much you're buzzing and how much you're excited for the next day, because if you're tired, you're not going to be 100% on form. And you're probably going to look a little bit tired as well, which is fine if you're dressed like me today, by the way, because you can just put lots of black under your eyes, but probably not if you're going for something a little bit more pretty. Allow a lot more time than you think you're going to need to get ready. So the night before, when you try on your costume, try to time it and see how long it takes you, and then add on 45 minutes to that. Just if you wake up and everything goes wrong, you've got time to rectify it and you're not going to run late. Photographers don't like it when you run late. They really don't. I don't know how I know that.
It's never happened.
Bring a change of clothes with you, because cosplay is not that comfortable. You kind of want to be prepared and make sure that you're warm, especially if it's cold. Have blankets, bring snacks, bring water. These are all things you're going to forget about while you're shooting, but then as soon as you're wrapped up, you're going to be tired, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be thirsty, so you're going to want to have all that stuff there with you. If you haven't shot with a photographer before particularly, I definitely recommend bringing a friend. That way they can be there to help out, and then if there's anything that goes wrong, like say you're in a secluded location, mainly ladies I'm talking to, if you haven't met with a photographer before and you're going off into the bush by yourself with some random dude, in any other circumstance that would be weird, and it's still weird when you're a model and they're a photographer if you haven't shot with them before, so make sure you're safe and make sure you bring somebody with you that can help and make sure that nothing terrible happens. Always ask with the photographer if they're cool with behind the scenes and stuff. If they are, definitely recommend doing that. It's really good for social media. It's good to kind of give people a hint about what's coming up and get them excited for what your shoot is. When you do that, I definitely recommend not giving too much away. So you don't want to take like a full shot of like your outfit, because then that takes away from the image when you release them, because everyone's already seen your outfit. If you take like a headshot or a selfie of the makeup, or maybe you get your friend who's with you to stand maybe to the left of the photographer so you can kind of see like a little bit of a silhouette of what you're doing, it creates a lot more interest, and then when you actually do post the photos, people aren't going to go, oh, I've already seen that. It's going to have a lot more impact, and you're going to get all the likes.
So yes, as I said before, the important things in a shot is basically, I'm going to say them as three things. We're going to say foreground is basically you, the subject. Background is everything else. That can include things in front of you, between you and the camera, and then light, which I'm still going to have to mention. I'm going to try not to, but so in terms of backgrounds, it's again the key here is you want to stand out for the background, or you want your subject to stand out for the background, or alternatively you want them to be in that world. So you can work it a bunch of different ways. Like the main thing is that your eye in an image will naturally go to the area of the highest local contrast. Generally in a photo that tends to be a human face, and also that tends to be what we look for as people. But things like text is really dangerous because we look at that. It's always high contrast, it's a pattern. We're trained to look at that stuff. So what you really, when you're setting up your shot, you're trying to make sure that people look at it the right way. They look at what you want them to look at first. If that's the person's face, which it normally is, make sure there's nothing fighting that in the image. So often you get in the background, if you get a very busy background, that can be very difficult to work with because there'll be so many elements that can distract. Even busy could even be like a bush that's like lots of lights and darks very close together. That can be quite distracting unless your character is wearing very one colour, for example. I've seen sometimes you can do the opposite. What works well is if you actually match all the colours up. A photographer I really love is called Robin von Swank, and she does that a lot. She does a lot of browns, so everyone will be wearing browns, the very detailed background, but everything sits together. But again, you have to be very good at lighting to work with that because you have to still be able to pick things out without being distracted. If you're not, contrast in colour can work well. So if it's a blue sky and someone's wearing orange, you're going to see them a million miles away. And you generally want a background then with one colour if you can, or very few colours. The more colours you introduce into your image, the more distracting it will be. To play with more colours is hard. I'm not saying you can't do it, there are great photos done with it, but you're making it hard for yourself. If you're not experienced, reduce the colours. The fewer colours, the easier it'll be. Plus, it also tends to look better, to be honest. A limited palette, like you see a painter, they don't just get every colour and go splattering away. They tend to work within a tonal range. It's the same thing. So the main thing is just to make sure that you step out for the background. And other things that are costly, again, because we look for patterns as people, is lines in the background. The horizon line's the obvious one. I see a lot of shots with like horizon go through someone's neck, like what the hell? Man, that's gonna be so distracting. Unless you do like Ned Stark, and it's supposed to be some sort of little thing. Just don't do it, eh? Like, and so people tilt the horizon a little bit. Like that looks amateur hour, man, because it looks unstable. All the rules with photography aren't rules, they're just guides, but they're there for a reason. They're there because it's how people see things as normal. So if you're breaking the rules, you've got to be aware of why you're breaking it. So tilting the background, for example, it makes things unsettled, it makes things unstable, which you may want, but do it deliberately. I'm going to use a movie example because I love movies. Saw this the other day watching with Sophia and another mate who's here as well. We watched Die Hard as a Christmas movie. And
best Christmas movie of all time.
Obviously. And there's a scene towards the end of that where Alan Rickman's Hans Gruber, he's the villain, but he's talking to Bruce Willis, our hero John McClane, and he's trying to pretend to be Bill Clay, a worker at Nakatomi Plaza. But what they do when they shoot that scene is whenever Rickman's talking, everything's tilted. It's nothing straight anymore. All the lines are all tilted, they're all weird, he's unstable. And they light him from below, that horror movie lighting again. So even though he's saying things that are perfectly reasonable things about how he works at Nakatomi, we, the audience, feel unsettled. We feel he's not trustworthy. We feel he's dangerous because of how they've framed the photo. So if you want that vibe, you do it. If you don't do it. Especially don't tilt it the wrong way. Like if you tilt someone towards vertical lines, they look like they can rest on them a little bit. If you tilt it the other way, it looks like they're sliding out of frame. It always looks weird. So just be very careful with those sort of things. Same with lines in the background, is make sure they're aimed at things you want them to be aimed at. People follow lines. If you've got lines leading to your subject, it really helps. It focuses people on it. Like it could be a log that leads to someone, it could just be lines of buildings, it could be anything, but you don't want them leading to pointless places in your image because it'll be distracting from your subject. Again, I mean, there's a bunch of ways the lines could work. I mean, anything in the background like that can be distracting. I remember seeing one photo, it was at a con, someone did a superhero photo, the guy standing there all heroic, but they stood him in front of one of those poles that they stop cars getting through for pedestrians, so it's right, sort of, it's like, he's like a tripod, and it's like, oh. I mean, he was Superman, maybe it was a comment on, I don't know, superiority of Kryptonians, I don't know, but once you see it, you can't see the rest of the image, it's just too distracting. No matter what else you do, he's going to be the guy with the big metal, whatever. And so as well as those other lines, the other lines are where you crop an image. Like if you have the crop really close to the bottom, it looks like people are standing on the edge of frame. That can look really weird. And same with the top, if it's there, it looks like they're banging their head on the top of the photo. Other crops that are weird, like just through fingertips, or like just as they're going to frames, have feet just leaving frame. The familiar crops, I'll use movie terms again, is a wide, which includes the feet, includes everything. Medium, sort of through the waist, or just above the waist. Medium close is sort of through the armpit, and then a close-up is the head. But I actually like, there's a one through the middle of the thigh I really like, sort of a three-quarter thing. It's called, in movie terms, I have to call it a cowboy crop, because it was, for the westerns, it was saying get the guns in. But I find that's a very flattering one, especially for women. And you can do different, if someone like wants to look slimmer, you crop it slightly higher. If you want to look taller, you crop it lower towards the knees. But once you crop through the knees, it makes them look like amputee. Below the knees, it looks like they're standing in something. You know, it's, again, you can do it deliberately. I think, I might even have a photo in this, I can't remember. We did one again in the Lara Croft thing where I deliberately put Sophia too low in the shot. Because the aim was to make it look like production still, like more of a candid. So you deliberately have people slightly unsettled to make it look not posed because it's an awkward crop. But again, you have to think about it if you do it. The rules aren't rules, but to break them, you need to know why you're breaking them, because people have established things like the rule of thirds, all this sort of stuff. People have established it as comfortable to look at. Don't follow it. Don't think, oh, I just have to do that every time. That's not what they're for. They're just to say that this is what comfortable feels like. If you're going to change it, know why you're changing it. And it's the same thing, like I disregard the rule of thirds all the time. I love negative space images, just big empty things. And one of my favourite crops I actually do is the opposite. What you're supposed to do is supposed to rule of thirds, like movie, you're supposed to have the 2/3 that way. So you've got your person on the third line, 2/3 that way, they're looking into frame. I like doing the opposite. I like having someone right on the edge looking out, and you light them from the front. And then it's mysterious because it's all this space, and they seem to be travelling out of frame. They're looking at something we can't see. They're being lit by it. It could be something hopeful they're looking at. It could be something menacing. It could be all sorts of things. And what you play in this space, you make this all dark. They're leaving the darkness. You make it bright. They're heading into danger. You do all sorts of stuff with negative space. Don't think emptiness is nothing. Like one of my favourite ways to shoot is in a studio. That's the simplest background you can get. But you almost never have it flat. You never have a flat colour unless it's like for a catalogue or something. Because even a gradient of light across that, how that plays is a mood. If you have it so it's bright around the heads and then fades away, it's like a spotlight that'll make you feel a certain thing when you look at it. If you have it the opposite way around, you have it very bright and they're in the gloomier part, then again it'll make them seem isolated and lonely. Even a blank background, the simplest background, you can do a lot with. A wall that's got a texture, like an industrial wall, can mean a lot. A stone wall, a brick wall, as long as the texture, the type material matches your character, you can do anything with that. And I think don't just think, I need to put props in the background. It's the opposite's often true. You've got to look at every single detail in the shot before you push the shutter. It's easy to just go, oh, the person looks great, I'll hit it. But there'll be distracting things, there'll be a little thing lit up, too much. You've got to just train your eye to look around the whole image before you push the shutter. Otherwise, it's just wasting time. And if there is objects that you might find, like a cluttered background where you don't want people looking at stuff, or you want them to look at it in order to tell a story, you might find it's easiest to use, if you've got artificial lighting or even natural lighting, to try and put things in light or shadow so people look around the image at the right time. If you want them to look at the person's face, then a detail in the costume, then a certain prop to tell a story, that's how you should light it. You should light it. This is the brightest point, or the highest contrast, so it could be in the darkest area and then that could be a more brighter area, but the contrast is what people follow. And you want people to look around the image in the right way. I love images where it's very deep, dense. There's a photographer called Gregory Crutzen, who I won't go on about, who is the king of this. He'll do massive images. They're like 6-metre printouts, they're huge. And it tells a massive story. It's like a movie in one frame because you're following your eye around, and he leads you around because he's so good at it. And that's the sort of thing, if you can build to, you should try and do. You should always try and have people look at the image the way you want them to look at it. Is your that?
Hello. So, I'm going to talk about what to do with posing. So, definitely practice in the mirror. It feels really uncomfortable, and you kind of feel like a little bit of a dork when you do it, but then that way you kind of know what you look like before you do your shoot. So I definitely have like a few poses pre-planned before you get to your shoot. Everything else I think you can just kind of improvise. While you are doing your pose, don't think about your next pose. That's a mistake I see a lot of people doing, and it comes across in your face. Like the pose that you're doing, you've got to 100% commit to it while you're doing it. So expression is really, really important, and when you're thinking about your other pose, your expression is going to be thinking about your other pose as well, and it's the difference of the whole shot. Your face is going to make people feel something, along with all the lighting and everything else that has been set up. If you're standing there looking really blank and really bored, and everything else in the photo is like moody and dramatic, and you're just standing there like, it's not going to look good. You really need to trust your photographer. It's another thing that I see that people struggle with a little bit. They are your eyes, and you need to listen to them because you can't see what you're doing, so you have to really trust them. At the end of the day, they want the photos to look good as well, so it's definitely, the advice that they're giving you is definitely going to be beneficial to you, because the worst case scenario in that situation is that there's a bad photo and you go, hey, I don't like that photo. Whatever, you've taken 200 frames, there's going to be 3 or 4 that you like, and that's important. So don't be afraid to try stuff, even if you think that you look really awkward or you feel really uncomfortable. A lot of the time that actually looks really good. A lot of the time when I take photos, I don't breathe. So it's like, take the photo! But I know that my stomach's going to look really flat and really good. And then I can go, ugh. And then after the shoot, we can all go and get Carl's Jr. If you feel that your concentration is slipping a little bit during the shoot. It's not a race. Same thing I was thinking about your next pose. It's really not a race. Like, take your time to have a breather, step away, think about what you're going to do. Even if you've got to go into the bathroom and just check in the mirror again, like with your poses and your expressions, what you're going to do. Like, sometimes that's really good because it can give you the confidence that you need. If you feel confident, you're going to look confident. If you don't feel confident, you're not going to look confident.
Actually, I'll say a little bit there too from a photographer's point of view. Confidence is so important to the photos that it's your job to make sure the person you're shooting feels confident. It's very easy to rattle someone's confidence. It takes so little. You've got to be extremely careful. You've got to watch them, and every person is different. It's really easy to take a photo and you go, oh, this looks really great, and you show them back a camera, and you'll see their face drop because there's something in it they don't like, and they will not get their confidence back. So you have to be very, very careful how you deal with people, and you have to make sure that if they look good, tell them, for God's sake, tell them. You know, if you're loving the photos, say you love it. You'll see the difference in people's posing every time. It's so easy for photographers to say nothing, and that's the worst. The person on the other end does not know what to do. They don't know if what they're doing is right. Do they keep doing it? Do they change? Just do not shut up. It's the only way to work. You have to be like, that's awesome, that's cool, keep doing that, it's fantastic. And if you're changing something from your end, don't go like, oh shit, no, fuck. Because they'll think it's them. You have to go, just give me a sec, I gotta adjust the light, or just a moment, I'm gonna adjust something. For God's sake, don't ever let them think it's them, because if they lose confidence, your photo's gonna be bad. You have to constantly be reassuring them. If you want them to change something, it's only, you just be their eyes, you just adjust them. You don't have any kind of criticism, because then no one does something wrong. If a pose or an expression is bad, it's because of the photographer. It's not because of the model. It's because you can see it. If you open a photographer's portfolio, you'll see the ones who can't direct, because everyone's got the same expression. Everyone just looks blank, because they don't talk to people. You have to encourage people, you have to reassure them. One thing I always tell people is I always say, we're going to take 300 photos and we're going to keep 10. The other 290, I don't give a shit. They could be fantastic, they're getting deleted. They could be terrible, they're getting deleted. So go for greatness. Do something crazy. If it looks terrible, don't worry, no one's ever going to see it. But you have to try to be great. Otherwise people just take really safe photos and they're not sure, and you get 300 good photos. But who wants that? You want great photos, and the other 290 are getting deleted, no one ever knows. So just make sure people feel they can go for it. Encourage them. Give them suggestions. If they want to do their thing, let them do their thing and just help them with it. Don't fight them. Never fight them. You're there to support them. You're there as a friend, as an assistant. You're not there to boss them around. Like, it's not your show. The pictures are for them. They're of them. No one will ever go, no one gives a shit about the photographer, okay? Everyone only remembers who was in the photo. So make sure they look their best and make sure they feel their best. It's a weird thing being in front of camera with a bunch of lights. Like, one thing I recommend to any photographer is get someone to shoot you sometime, because that feeling of standing there, and especially that person doesn't talk much, and you feel what it's like and how awkward you feel and how uncomfortable and how you don't know what to do, and then make sure you never let anyone feel that on your shoots. You just got to constantly be talking to people, constantly suggesting things. In your head, you've got to go, that's why you go with a plan. You've got to go with 100 shots you want to do. So there's never a break. People never have to fumble around. You've got to always seem totally in control and totally their friend at all times. The minute there's any kind of antagonism, the shoot sucks. You know, you're all there for the same reason. Encourage them, make sure they're doing a good job. Make sure if they look good, tell them they look good. If something's awesome, say it's awesome. That's something I learned from a couple of people I know who got shoots with photographers, and they came back and asked them how it went, and they were like going, oh great, he seems so stoked. And they both said it, and I was like, well, what did you think? So it was the photographer being excited meant they felt good about the shoot. And that was a real lesson to me that if you just stand there like a robot, you might think it's cool to just be, I'll just click away because I do this every day and I don't want to be emotional or anything. But that's silly, man. Like, if you're getting excited, be excited. It rubs off on people to build their confidence. Don't just go, oh yeah, it's up to you, do your thing, and make them feel uncomfortable. It's silly, man. You're in it together. Make sure they feel great. It's such an underrated part of photography, I think, directing. And I think it's one of those things that you can't teach very well. You really just have to do it a lot and just watch people and see how they feel, because it's having that empathy and helping people do their thing. Encouraging them to do moves. If they're going to do like a jumping pose or something, you can't just go, oh yeah, no, that looks shit.
You have to be like, okay, try that. I love the jump. That's a really good idea. Maybe if you turn slightly when you did it, let's try that. You know, doing it together, and then they feel they're achieving things with you rather than against you. A happy subject means a good photo. A confident subject means a good photo. I remember I did one shoot on a beach of the girl in a bikini type stuff, and a guy was watching with a dog. I didn't know, he was behind me, and he wouldn't leave. And it rattled her to the point that I finally figured out what was going on, and I turned to the guy and I just said, "Oh, you all right there, mate?" And he didn't move, so I started taking photos of him. Yeah, he left pretty fast then. But she never got her confidence back. It had been rattled and it never came back after that. So it takes so little, and so you've got to be very, very vigilant with what you're saying, what you're doing. Just make sure people are happy and comfortable. Monitor them. If they look tired, you check they're okay. All the time, check people are okay. Because people think, oh, like what Sophia was saying about taking breaks, is often people go, oh no, I don't want to look like I'm weak in any way. I don't want to, like, I'm not feeling it anymore, but I don't want to let on. Let people take a break. Let them take a minute, change some lights around, or whatever you need to do. And then they can come back, and they know you're on your side, and they come back full of confidence again, rather than feel they have to battle through something. It's a tricky thing to learn, but it's as important as anything else in photography, maybe more important. And I think that's a big difference when you get an image that looks exciting with a subject that's doing something crazy and interesting, and ones of people just standing there. And I think that's why you get a lot of like fashion images where the models are all just like, because they're treated like crap. You know, that's why that happens. They're just treated like coat hangers, and that's not what you want to do with cosplay photos. Right, so then once the shoot's wrapped up, I think, the next one? Oh, Sophia, can you hold the mic real close, by the way? People can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. So I would recommend talking to the photographer before you leave the shoot about when to expect the images. I'm friends with a lot of photographers and a lot of models, and they're always complaining about one person or the other, like either taking too long to send the photos, or some models harassing them for the photos, and 9 times out of 10 in that situation it's because the two people haven't communicated the turnaround time. And it's so easy, all you need to do is ask. So, hey, like how long can I expect to wait for the photos?
If you're the photographer, you guess your amount and add a couple of weeks. I always tell people 4 weeks. I don't think I've ever missed 2, but I'm never going to say that. I'm going to say 4 weeks because I know for sure, even sickness, death in the family, I'll still do that. So always, the worst, people don't care what you say as long as you stick to it. Like if someone says it's going to be 6 months for images, people go, oh shit, oh, all right. But they know. If you say, oh yeah, I'll get them tomorrow, and then you don't, they mess you the next day, oh it'll be a week or something, mess you again, you still don't have them, then people get upset. So actually figure out how long it takes you to edit stuff, and then add a bit of time for contingency, and just stick to it. Every time, stick to it, and just don't leave people wondering, and communicate. If something is going to go wrong, just drop people a line and say, you know, hey look, a bunch of stuff's come up, sorry, I've only done half of them, I'll see you that half, the other half will take me 3 more weeks. People don't mind, but if you don't talk or if you drag things on, people get upset, especially if there's money involved, then that's really unprofessional and shitty. But even if it's just something you're doing for a friend, it's just being a decent person, you know? Sorry, John.
That's alright. Make sure you communicate with the photographer as well, what's cool to post and what's not cool to post. If they send you a whole bunch of proofs, no matter how excited you are, before they're edited, the photographer probably doesn't want anyone else to see those, so make sure, if you're not sure, to ask again. It's pretty much all about communication after the shoot.
You want to explain what a proof is?
So a proof is like straight out of camera, just showing you an example of the photo for you to make a selection. Do you want to talk about the licensing?
Yeah, so again, that's probably more to the photographers, but what you want to do is, in New Zealand, the law is, if no money's changed hands, the photographer has the copyright. If money has changed hands, the person who commissioned the photo has copyright. If this is not what you want, something needs to be written down. What I tend to do is, if someone's paying me, I say those are their photos, I retain 0 rights. I've got no interest in that. I take enough photos, I don't need photos. So I say they are theirs, and they can do whatever they like with, and then I write that down, I sign it, they sign it, that's that. I also have in there, for example, in that same agreement, I say the proofs are mine, you cannot save them, you cannot put them anywhere. You put these sort of things down. If it's unclear, if you've got some images off a photographer and you're not sure, you've got to sort that sort of stuff out before anyone, if you're going to sell prints, you don't want to be selling a bunch of prints, then some dickhead photographer sues you, you know, because they're copyright. you've got to make sure that everything, if anything, just talk about it. Just make sure it's before the shoot is better than after, because after they might have fallen in love with the photos, they might change their mind. It's better to sort it out beforehand and you just figure out exactly who's can do what with the images. For example, there's a thing called TFP, I don't know if you know the phrase, it used to stand for time for prints, the idea being that the model, the photographer, the makeup artist, whoever, all gives their time and in return they get prints. No one gives prints anymore, so it's sort of time for photos, is sort of what's referred to now. So there's no money changing hands per se, but you are being paid, but in photos. So to treat it like a paid shoot, there should still be a clear example of what you're going to do with the images. The general rule is that it's all go for non-commercial stuff. So if you do a TFP shoot, generally you can post stuff online, all that sort of stuff. But if you're going to sell them, you really need to talk to the other people involved in the shoot. You need to figure out what the deal is with that. Because as I say, if no money's changed hands, the photographer's got the copyright, and that can really hurt. And there's also things around watermarks. Sometimes you get a photographer put their logo on things. Again, there's nothing legally enforceable about that. It's just what you guys agree. Generally, what's nice is if I give people a version with and without a watermark. I don't really care what people post. It's up to them. But gee, it's nice if they post them with their logo on it, because they get separated and people see the logo first. That no one reads the credits necessarily, and it's nice when you get a call from someone go, hey, I saw this photo and I really liked it, could you do something like that for me? And you realise it's because your logo was on the corner, otherwise they wouldn't have seen it. So it's generally polite to use the one with the logo on. If you're a photographer, make your logo smaller in a corner, don't put it in the middle. I know you're worried about people stealing your photos. You're going to steal my photos. Nobody's going to steal your photos, dude. They're not that good. It's not going to happen. It's just, there are a lot of photos out there, no one's going to steal them. It's like, and if they do, it's like some other guy's claiming my work as his. Well, that's another problem. It's ruining all your photos out of some paranoia thing. It's just, man, it's just deal. If it happens, deal with it. It's not going to happen. It's so crazy. But in terms of using a watermark, don't feel upset if someone doesn't post you on the watermark. They don't credit you. Yes, you should. The idea is that anytime you shoot, what I always try and do is if I'm posting a picture of someone, I talk about that person. The makeup's great, I'm always talking about the makeup artist. I think you generally don't want to talk about, if you don't mention someone who helped you make the photo, it's kind of shitty and it's easy to miss. I know, for example, the Lara Croft shoot, I know the guy who gave us the guns, I keep forgetting to mention his name, and I feel really bad. It's Chris Asprey, he's doing the gun range down here. Absolutely lovely guy, and I keep forgetting to mention him when I post things. I feel terrible every time. So you've got to remember all those little details, like someone who did your hair, anyone who loaned you stuff, anyone who helped out on the day. It's just nice, and you never know how these things will come back. And it might come back in a good way or in a bad way, but if you don't do it, it's just being a dick. You just don't be a dick. That's the main thing.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Because what you want to do is if you want to be able to sell prints, the other thing I should mention is you want to make sure you get high-res images. I deliver photos in two sizes to people. One for online, because it's small, I sharpen to the size. So the small one looks good online because it's small, and it's all sharpened to that size. The big one looks terrible online because it's all kind of smudgy when you shrink it down. But if you're going to print one, you print the little one that looks rat shit because there's not enough pixels to go big. So you print the big one, you can do it like a billboard if you want. So make sure that you're getting the high-res stuff off a photographer. I have heard of photographers who don't give out high-res stuff without being paid more. If that sort of thing's going to happen, make sure you know it up front. If you're planning to sell prints, you're going to need the high-res versions. If you're going to make a store for your cosplay stuff, you're going to sell your prints, and all you've got is shitty quality images, it hurts, man. No one's going to be interested in that stuff. You've got to make sure you get the good stuff, and if it means paying extra, that's a decision you should make beforehand, not after the photos are taken. You want to talk about social media stuff? You've got a lot more followers than I have.
That's because I look good in really tiny Star Wars t-shirts.
So do I.
So you've gone through all of this effort with your shoot. You want it to reach as many people as possible. Something I see a lot of cosplayers do is they're constantly posting their progress, like every day. I did this, I did this, I did this. Sorry guys, but people don't really care after a while. Like after a couple of weeks of posting every day, like you're not really going to reach anyone because everyone's already seen the little amount of progress you've made. I think you're actually better off saving a lot of that stuff for after the shoot. Alison Tabitha, for example, she does that. She'll just come out with her costume and then she goes, and here's how I made it. And I think that's a lot more interesting, and I think your followers, you're going to find that they're going to care more about how you made something once they've seen how amazing it looks and they've seen the professional photos. So before you go posting everything, I'd probably come up with a little plan about how you're going to do it. So maybe a couple of like sneak previews and mentioning that you're doing the shoot behind the scenes just to generate that interest so people come back to look for it. Then the professional photo. Boom. Looks amazing. Everybody loves it. Everybody wants to know how you made it. A cool new feature, or kind of new feature on Instagram now, is that you can make an album. So you can have like your professional photo as the main photo, and then you can slide along. And then you can look at all your progress photos, because that way you've got your main image drawing everybody in, and you can write whatever you want underneath there, and you can show your progress, and people are going to read it, and they're going to be way more interested than if you're just like, and here's a piece of foam that I cut today that's going to turn into something else later on. People that aren't cosplayers, they're not really going to understand. The cosplay people that follow you hardcore, they might, but you want to reach more people. So you're going to want to make it so that it's interesting to people that aren't cosplayers as well.
All right, we're actually starting to run out of time a little bit, so we will go to, does anyone have any questions? Oh, yes. Okay, so my background's actually sort of short films and movie stuff. Anyone who's done that will know it takes a really long time to do even one, like a year. And I found I was sort of writer direct, but I also ended up doing all the cinematography a lot. I found my cinematography was not improving, or at least not at a rate I wanted. Unfortunately, my girlfriend, who's sitting over here, was doing a photography degree at the time. And I thought, that might be a good idea. And so that was about 5 years ago, so 5, 6 years ago. Oh shit, yeah. And so, yeah, so fortunately a couple of the actors in the short we've just done were former Miss New Zealands. So they would come from front of camera, and I said, oh, come around to my house and we'll go down the river and we'll take some photos. And so I just took a bunch of photos of them and I put them online and said, anyone want to pay me to take their photo? And people did, so they just kind of snowballed from there. So it was really just a case of I did it because I wanted to get better at writing. And I mean, I started like, I'm not a big gear head, I don't really care about gear, I don't think it matters. By all means get the best camera you can afford, but don't think you can't take photos because you haven't got a good camera. That's crazy. The first stuff I did was like on a $300 camera. The lens I still use today more than any other, it's like 150 bucks. You don't need the crazy gear. I mean, yes, if you take a photo, you take the same photo with a better camera, it's gonna be a better photo. If you take a shitty photo and then you take it with a great camera, all it means is you have a really detailed, highly clean picture of shit. And that's not really a step
Can't
forward.
polish a turd, folks.
But you can, but do you want to polish turd? I mean, it's still a turd.
I don't know, do you want to polish turd?
Oh, maybe.
It sounds kind of messy.
Yeah, so that was, and from there, I mean, I'm terrible at marketing, just people just approached me. I just, especially in commercial stuff, your name tends to go around. Like, you do an ad and someone says, oh, hey, you work with this company, can you do ours? And sort of, like, I do a portfolio every year, like a printed hardcover thing that I take in. But it's good to have a range. Like the stuff I post online is very different. I post boobs online because that gets the most likes. But like I've got a portfolio I take for a commercial job looks very different. So you have to know what you. And say if I was doing a cosplay, I would send them cosplay pictures. So you try and build up your portfolio and change it all the time. Like there's no photos. My portfolio for a year is only photos taken that year. So I've got one every year. They all stack up because I'm better than I was last year. Those photos suck compared to what I can do now. And that's how you should always be. You know? It's really easy to renew a portfolio. You take like 20, 30 shoots, you got a brand new portfolio. You know, it doesn't take very long. And it's crazy to cling to these ones from the past. It's better to make sure that your portfolio reflects you now, and that's what you can take jobs around. If you're taking stuff you used to do, people go, I love that. You go, I don't want to do that anymore. Well, why show it to them? So basically what you post, what you show is what people want. So make sure that you are showing what you want to do. It's easy to just do what people want to see necessarily. But if you take stuff to people with, here's the sort of stuff I do, they will ask for that stuff. I did some stuff for a theatre in parts of the north, and I just went along with, here's what they wanted and what I do are very different. And so we talked about it, sort of came sort of middle ground thing. So that was a bit weird. I felt weird that they wanted something that I don't do. But when I did what I do, they liked it and they want to do that next year. So, you know, sometimes it plays out all right.
You guys should go check those photos out, by the way. They're all really cool.
Does that sort of help you at all? Anyone else?
Take all of the photos while you're doing it and post them later. So post your photo once you've done the shoot and everything's ready, and then you can post all of your progress. Maybe cull it down a bit, so if there's not that much difference between, like say in a week you only got in a few hours, don't worry about it. Like you want the main differences. Like here is me cutting out the foam shapes, here's me with just the foam, and then there's the paint. Like you don't need to go in through every single step of what you've done. If there's anything that you think is particularly important with like in your cosplay, definitely include that and make sure you take photos. And take photos the whole time you're making it. You can kind of go over that afterwards, like you've got plenty of time, because after the shoot you're not going to get the photos the next day most of the time. You've got a little bit of leeway, so you've got time to think about it, definitely. Just think about what's going to appeal to everyone and what's actually going to be interesting. Was that helpful? Cool.
Yeah, so it's a tricky thing because the problem with posing is that there are no rules. It's situation specific, it's person specific. Like a guy who stands square on tends to look good. For a girl, that's usually her worst angle. But you have to look at the person. It's a really tough thing to do. What I tend to do at the start of a shoot, especially faces, I have you like faces, what they can do. I tend to tell people, like every time I start a shoot, I tend to say, hey, I'm about to do something really creepy, and I'm about to stare at your face for a bit. And I normally do it at the end of makeup, so I know how they're going to look.
And then he goes like this. And he still does it to me.
Because you're looking at things, like if I use Sophia's face as an example, like she's got very large eyes, so I can put a light higher than I could with other people, and I'd still get a catch light. You know, it's that same light would then accentuate cheekbones, whereas someone else, I put it in a different place. And it's the same with posing, and it's really tough. The only way you can really do it is to look at a bunch of photos. The more you know about the person you're going to shoot, the better. Like, you sneaky stalk them a little bit. Yeah, the characters are absolutely critical.
Absolutely.
But people often think that, here's a cool shot I saw of Batman, I want to do that shot. You'd be like, yeah, that's cool, but, you know, you're not quite built like that guy. And but you don't want to say this to a person, you know. So you have to think of, with the person, how they would look their best. Like, everyone's beautiful, everyone's got strengths. It's your job as a photographer to bring those out. And all posing rules, per se, like you see the beauty pageant one everyone does, they're there again for a reason. That is a flattering pose, but it's a pretty obvious sort of pose, you know, and it won't work for everybody. So sorry, I know that's not much help. It's one of those things where that's why you make a shoot go for a while, is you actually try things. But as you build experience, when someone walks through the door, you'll be able to go, I can see that person's angles, or I know how to light them. Because like if you shadows are your friends, you can put things in shadow you don't want people to see, you can light things people they do want to see. The one that still bothers me to this day is I once had a girl look at the back of the camera and go, I hate my forehead. And I've got no idea what she was talking about. I don't know whether it was too big, too small, too wide, too orange. I don't know what it was. So I just like, oh, okay, cool. And just change an angle and just hope like shit. Because if you can't, because everyone's got something about themselves that they hate that no one else can see. And you won't pick it, and it's just the way it is. So you just have to try and cover as much in the shoot as possible, try things. A lot of things won't work. You'll turn someone's side on because you think they look great, you look at it and go, ooh, that doesn't look good. But you've got to give it a go. I think there are probably sort of posing things you can go to, like certain things, like if you want to look strong, you get low. Like I tend to shoot like this all the time. I almost never shoot down on people. If you shoot down, people look vulnerable, which certain characters maybe, but generally you'll find things that work for you, for your style. And the only way to do it really is to take a lot of photos. I'm sorry, man. I wanted to say something, oh, I just do this. But it really is, and don't be lazy in a shoot. It's easy to go like, at the start, take 4 photos and go, I think we got it. Take 200, try a bunch of stuff. If stuff doesn't work, it doesn't work. As long as the person's still confident and they're happy, keep shooting. You know, if they've had enough, stop. But if you think that they're enjoying it and they want to try, they want to jump up on that fence, let them jump up on the fence. Suggest things, have a look. Try and have a look at everything. That's the hard thing in a pose. It's really easy to think you've got it, then you look at it, you go, oh gee, man, that elbow looked really weird. Like, their arm looks weird and stumpy and the angle. So try and look at everything before you take the shot. No one cares if you take a second to check it. If you're just going click, click, click and hoping like shit, you'll never get it. You have to take the moment to look, but then don't be afraid to take lots and lots and lots of photos.
Can I add to that as well? Shooting with lots of different photographers. I've shot with photographers that haven't said a single word to me the whole time. And then people like Matt, who's really great at direction. And I think one of the things that makes Matt really good at direction with poses is that he sees what I'm trying to do and he makes it better. So say like, if I wanted to do a pose in this outfit, if I wanted to be quite staunch and I was standing there like that, he'd be like, oh, actually maybe put your weight on one side and narrow your eyes a little bit. Do it. Do a little. Sorry, I just really wanted to do that, to be honest. But yeah, so make sure you know who you're shooting, like what that character is. Even if you have to like watch an anime you've never heard of before, just to kind of get an idea and then kind of see what they want out of the image and then make it better. Make what they're already doing better. So something I do a lot of is I always turn my hand to the front of camera and it makes it look like I've got a big seal flipper. And I'm constantly getting told off for that. Now it's just down to hand, and I know what that means. But I know that's going to make the shot look a lot better because it goes from this to this, and then my hand doesn't look like a big giant seal flipper that takes away from the entire image.
But it's I think when you're directing, it also depends on the person in that. My favourite way of directing is to treat them like an actor. If someone's good, if someone's into it, you could say things like, you could, I want this image to be your, like, if it's Sophia, it's like, okay, we're going to do regal, goddess of death, you'll be queenly in this one. So you line it like that, you tell her that, let her interpret that, and then you just adjust her for what she does. Like if she stands a certain way, you can look at it and go, okay, we're looking for queenly, I'm not feeling it, you've got to lift your chin a bit more. Like expressions are hard, most people can't do them, but you can cheat it. Like if anyone looks down, they maybe look sad. If they lift their chin, they look arrogant. There's little things you can do that you can get around a lot of awkward expressions, but it's better if you explain to them the vibe. It goes right back to the start of this, the vibe of the photo is everything. Because if you say this is going to be queenly, you're going to light it like that, you're going to get a background like that, you're going to shoot, look a lie on the ground, you're going to shoot up, you're going to get in a pose like that. And if they understand it, they can interpret it how they like the character, how they feel that vibe. And say if she was going to be, I know you're vengeful, we change everything around. If you just let them just move, you'll be fighting each other. You'll be lighting it to be queenly, and she'll be, I'm being cute. It's like,
Also communicate what you're shooting as well as a crop, because otherwise you're going to have people focusing on their full body when you're like coming up in a mid crop and they're not going to know, and then that way they can focus more on what's actually going to be in the shot.
Is that enough of an answer?
That was a pretty long answer, sorry dude.
I think we still have a little time about now. Any other questions? Then I think that's us. Thanks so much for coming out, guys. Really appreciate that. Hope you have a good day.